UK, I think people will be a little bit more upfront if they don't think something's working. In Hong Kong, I feel like you have to pick up the hints. So if someone comes to you and like says, maybe you should change this, then you should definitely change it.
So, Tom and Ingrid, can you tell us a bit about what made you want to come teach in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I think for me, partially it was the city's status as a financial centre. The standard of English on the whole is relatively high, which I think gives it a better platform than maybe other countries to be able to teach English in. I've also had a personal fascination for Hong Kong, its culture, and to be honest, its food, which hasn't disappointed so far.
Nice.
So I came back mainly because of family. I think I'm very privileged and very fortunate to have the opportunity to study in the UK. I was in a very nurturing school and I met a lot of good teachers and they were very loving and very supportive. And now I want to come back to Hong Kong and do the same for students in Hong Kong and encourage and help them develop in that way.
Can you tell me about how Hong Kong's lifestyle is different than in the UK?
For me, it's very fast paced, especially coming from a small village. I mean, I'm used to London as well, which is a very fast paced city. But I think because Hong Kong is so compact, there's a lot of people. It takes some getting used to. I also think that there's a focus on efficiency and getting things done. So it's important not to take certain aspects personally. I think people need to realize they're not just not holding the door open for you. It's just not in the culture to wait and hold the door open for people. I think sometimes people in Hong Kong can come across as a little bit aloof, but they don't mean to be. And once you talk to them, you'll realize they're incredibly friendly people.
I agree.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think sometimes Hong Kong people might not come across as being like they don't look very friendly, but then like I think it's again with the efficiency and the time, I think a lot of people just expect you to do your thing, and so but when you do ask them questions, they're like always more than happy to help you, and yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think being an Asian culture and being a big city, and everyone has a place they're going to, it's really professional, it's really fast paced. But then whenever you need help, I find people are so kind here as well. And so now you both have some experience teaching in Hong Kong for a few months. How do you find Hong Kong students?
I think Hong Kong students are very keen to learn, and on the whole, they're attentive. But there are some differences that I think need to be noted from the UK. Because there's such a big focus on exams in Hong Kong, they learn it in a different way to how we would. Because for me personally, I didn't sit exams until I was in year 7, so in comprehensive school. Whereas my kids, some of them who are 8, they all have set exam period every couple of months actually, so it's very frequent. So learning is focused around getting good grades in their exams. Whereas for me in the UK in primary school, our learning was focused on just pure learning up until we got to comprehensive or secondary school, I should say.
I really agree. I think students in Hong Kong are really smart. They participate in a lot of extracurricular activities, and they have a lot going on in their lives. And I feel like in Hong Kong, in the classroom, students tend to be more quiet. They like to listen and they write. When they have to answer questions, they have to raise their hand and wait for their names to be called or their number. And then they stand up and it's like being in a spotlight. They have to have the courage to answer questions in that way. A way that I found has been useful is to call out their name so that they feel that they don't have to raise their hand and they can answer a question in that way. So it helps encourage more interaction in that sense.
When you were a student in the UK compared to in Hong Kong, how was the classroom layout different?
Yeah, okay, so I went to a very small primary school with only around 70 people. So it was 9 people in my year, and we had group tables with 6 people sat on each one. Also, my class was mixed between years 4s, 5 and 6. You had 3 years in one classroom. So we'd all have the same structure of the lesson, but our tasks would be different on levels of ability. Whereas Hong Kong, everybody's set. Whereas we wouldn't have sets until comprehensive school, year 8. Hong Kong kids are set early because they have a lot of exams, they have marks to go on. I also think that Hong Kong, the classrooms are bigger, so although maybe this might be an exception, it's not uncommon. I have a few classes of 36 students, which is quite a big classroom, and they all sit at individual desks. So I think the management style has to be different to how you teach in the UK, and maybe spend less one-on-one time with your students in Hong Kong than maybe you could in the UK.
I think they sit individually because of COVID, but usually they sit in pairs. But interaction isn't like more interaction in the classroom isn't impossible. I feel like we just need to give them really clear,
Yeah.
precise, specific instructions as to how much time you have to do this task and what you're doing comprehension checks and making sure that they know what they're doing instead of just letting them do a discussion. And another thing that's really different for me is that in the UK, we go into a teacher's classroom. So we go into the history classroom, we go into the English classrooms. But then here in Hong Kong, we sit in one classroom and then the teacher, like the history teacher, comes into the classroom and then that's how the lesson starts. In the UK, like the moment that you walk into the classroom, you know this is business time, this is lesson time. But then in Hong Kong, there needs to be like a different transition. The transition is when the teacher comes into the classroom, everybody stands up. There's like a greeting, good morning class, good morning teacher Ingrid. And then also the same happens when at the end of the class, the students stand up and we're like, oh, thank you teacher Ingrid. And then you're like, thank you class, and goodbye and thank you class. So this is like a very standard structure of classroom time.
Like you guys brought up some good points. Because your classrooms were so much smaller and the classroom layout was different, there was a lot more group discussions that could be done, and the teacher just threw out a question and the students could answer. Whereas here, you really have to prepare to give like good instructions and have like a classroom structure because you're managing a much larger group size. I'm sure our new teachers have something to say about classroom management in Hong Kong. How is classroom management in the UK different than in Hong Kong?
I think in the UK, students are less likely to directly challenge the teacher. So I remember in the UK, if we weren't happy with lessons or the way teaching was going or the general thrust of the classroom was going, some of the boys would get together and just tell the teacher, we're not happy with this, or this could be improved, we don't like doing this, can we do something else instead? Whereas I don't feel that is something that would happen in Hong Kong. I feel like students are more likely to sort of passively resist, and that they will sit there just sort of not doing the work or getting very fidgety or quite chatty, and they'll just get distracted rather than actively clarifying an issue with the teacher. You think that's fair?
Yeah. I think so as teachers we still try to encourage interaction, even though it's like such a huge class. And I think one of the most important thing is to establish on the first lesson how you can get the students to quiet down. So for example, that could be clapping, that could be, shouting a word and having students repeat it after you. And yeah, I think that's been really, really important to be able to get the students back to focus and back to listening to you.
Yeah. I think the amount of examples you need to give in Hong Kong, maybe more than the UK.
Yeah.
I think in the UK, just the sort of collaborative style means that kids are more willing to look at a task and just try what they think is best.
Yeah.
Whereas because Hong Kong, there's a lot of exams, I think kids are more focused on getting that right answer in the first place.
Everything's graded, so they want to make sure that their answers are correct. So you need to make sure that you give them very precise feedback, whether that's right or wrong, or give them an example so they know exactly what they're doing and what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so I think what both of you mentioned was, if we prepared in advance, because we're managing a lot more people, there's less chance of being like, okay, let's do this. And then someone saying, oh, well, we don't know how to do this. And then you clarifying, but you're having to lead a large group of students. And so like thinking in advance, first they set up, what are your expectations? Like how will I manage and order the class? And then later, encouraging them, this is what you're looking for. That would help them. So I really liked what you guys shared. I think that's.
I have one more thing.
Yeah, please.
So it differs from different schools, but usually there's like a class representative or like a subject representative. So it's nice. It'd be really useful to find out about who these students are before class, so you can get them to help you and they're always really happy to help. So, and it encourages responsibilities and roles in that way. So yeah.
That's good. Thank you, Ingrid. I'm sure our new teachers would appreciate that information. We have class student representatives in each class, and they are very helpful to help you collect homework or manage the class. Oh, partner teachers. That reminds me of that.
Yeah.
I think, Tom, you wanted to share with our new teachers about that?
Yeah, so I mean, you need to remember that it is your classroom and they're your lessons, but you'll be accompanied by a local teacher who will be your co-teacher, but don't let the name fool you. It is your classroom. I think they can be really helpful. I think it's important to ask them little tips about their class, what gets them to respond well, what do they not like, and just the little things that can help up your lessons. I think you should also ask them about what they feel their duty is in the class, what they feel their role is, because I think that can give you some really important information about how you plan your own lessons and where they get involved.
Yeah, that's good. So Ingrid mentioned class representatives, and Tom just shared with us about co-teachers in a classroom. And so a lot of times with native English teachers, your classroom might have a Chinese or a local Hong Kong teacher who's called a co-teacher that is in the classroom with you. It's not always the case, but this is quite often that happens. And as Tom said, it's important to talk to them, about how to run the classroom. It's still your classroom, but they're there to sometimes assist in terms of, with classroom management if things get too chaotic, or support you. And they will be able to give you a lot of resources and help in terms of how the classroom should be run and how it's helpful. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, guys. So any last words about the difference between working in Hong Kong compared to working in the UK?
I think people appear as not very friendly because in the UK, I feel like it's very normal to just be like, oh, how are you doing? Are you okay? You're all right, mate. And in Hong Kong, they don't really do that because of the fast-paced environment and how people like to be efficient. Working in Hong Kong, I think, is a lot of getting your work done. So people in the UK, I've only done part-time, but I feel like a lot of the time people stand around in the pantry to have a chat or like have a cup of tea. And in Hong Kong, we just get work done. So that doesn't really happen. So that might be a culture shock for some people. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that to an extent. I think it takes getting used to. I don't think it's anything that should put you off, but I think it's it's slightly different from the UK. I also think there's a slightly more indirect style. In the UK, I think people will be a little bit more upfront. If they don't think something's working, they might put you aside for a chat. They're very unlikely to say something in front of lots of people, but they'll be a lot more direct. Whereas in Hong Kong, I feel like you have to pick up the hints. So if someone comes to you and says, maybe you should change this, then you should definitely change it, because it's a subtle sign to change something big. So I think you should really try and read between the lines a touch more. I think with schools, I think you need to be prepared that Hong Kong schools start earlier and finish later. My primary school was 9 a.m. till 3:30 a.m. and we would have an hour for lunch and 2 half-hour breaks. Whereas in Hong Kong, my school starts at 7:45 and ends at 4 p.m. and breaks are not as long as in the UK, and they're a lot more rigid and structured. So it just wouldn't happen that you'd have an extra 10-15 minutes of break on a certain day and then less the other time. It's the same every day. It's very rigid and structured.
I thought it was very interesting that both of you mentioned, like how in Hong Kong, like the students aren't as direct in terms of, when they don't understand something. And in terms of like work culture and management, they're also like not as direct maybe when they say something. Like it's more like, maybe you should change it. And like, because being from Hong Kong, I think it's almost like our way of being polite, to add that politeness to what's going on. So actually cultural differences and like what's deemed as polite in one place and the other, it's like the emphasis looks really different. I thought that was very interesting for you guys to say. So how like as a teacher, you have to notice more like the subtle cues of the students if they're not happy or they're not understanding, because they won't tell you directly. And it's the same with work management. If your supervisor in the school tells you, something, oh, perhaps you could do it this way, they actually might mean, right, like you really should do it this way. It would be really helpful for your class. So I like what you guys said, just picking up those cultural differences between a direct culture and a more indirect culture. So what about your experience in Eureka? So both of you now work for the company for a few months now. What has your experience been with teaching in a local Hong Kong school through Eureka as an education agency?
Yeah, I think it's been really positive. I think one of the great aspects of Eureka is if you have any issues, there's always people at the company you can call who are happy to help clarify things. And they really take care of a lot. So I think it sort of takes some of the stress out of it because it's a massive thing moving to a different country and becoming a teacher in a completely different environment. So I think that having the people at the company you can call or text if you're not sure of something or you need help, I think that really is a massive bonus to your working lifestyle.
I think we provide, support in terms of finding accommodation as well. So that's something that teachers really appreciate sometimes.
Well, I am so happy to have you two with us. Thank you for sharing your experience as new teachers in Hong Kong. I'm sure it adds a lot of value to our potential new teachers coming. So thank you again, Tom and Ingrid.
Yeah,